Hey everyone, thanks for being here today. I am so excited to have Joey Labossiere with me today. He is a clinical hypnotherapist, a spiritual guide, and a seeker. And you are my first that I have invited back after over 100 experts. I don't know.
Wow.
Something in my spiritual guidance led me back to you again. So
Oh my gosh.
I'm excited.
I feel really excited too and like honored that I'm the first. I had no idea. So I'm excited that you trusted the guidance. Yeah,
Yeah.
very cool.
And so I'm just letting people know I'm going to put a link to that first video that was
Mhm.
last year underneath this video so that you can watch it because we're going to dive a little bit deeper into all the stuff we talked about then. So,
Love it. Let's do
yeah.
it.
Yeah. So, where do I want to start? Well, I know that you do a lot of meditations, and that's
Yeah.
really how I found you. So can you talk a little bit about that? I see that you have some free
Yeah,
ones
yeah.
on
Oh
YouTube,
yeah.
right? And
Lots.
then you
Yeah.
also have some paid ones on your website.
Yeah.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about your meditations.
So meditation will kind of roll back to like my dark night of the soul, depressive kind of spaces of life where at rock bottom 2016, and I talk a little bit more about that, I think, in our first chat. But long story short, really dark night of the soul, depression, anxiety, hitting rock bottom, you name it. Meditation was kind of my first introduction back into finding my relationship with God, source, or the divine. Meditation was a way for me to still and quiet my mind that was really running my show, and you know beating myself up about all this shit in the past, terrified of everything in the future, just taking me out of life itself, which is always now. The present moment is always when life is happening. And so, a mixture of, reading a book by Eckhart Tolle called A New Earth. Highly recommend anyone read that, anything by Eckhart.
Yes.
Yeah, amazing. And the Power of Now being the most popular book, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and many of you are. But A New Earth was my favorite. And that it made me realize the connection of like suffering and thinking, and how much of our suffering comes from the mind. It's not actually true threat. It's not actually true stuff we're dealing with. It's mind. It's all thought. So meditations were my first kind of rediscovery of that God essence, that stillness, feeling the connection with everything. And then move forward a few years as I trained to be a hypnotherapist and I started guiding people in the subconscious. I started really having fun with guiding meditations. So I started going on TikTok and Instagram and just being like, hey, this was like 2020, 2021. So people were locked up in their houses. Things were going crazy in the world. And I'm like, well, how do I help? How do I serve? Started going live and say, hey, come join me. I got a little journey I want to guide you on. And at first, it was just very basic stuff, kind of getting back into the body and out of the mind. And I started to grow a following through this. And people who had never experienced meditation or even knew what it was started to having these moments of peace, these little blips in the time that they were able to be still. And a lot of people had these experiences of like, wait, there's so much more. And that's what meditation is. It allows you to kind of reconnect with the inner world and the stillness. And so I've been doing that for years now, and I still do it every Sunday at 8:30 Central Time on Sunday evenings. And we just do journeys around inner child healing, sometimes just calmness, sometimes it's grief, sometimes it's like last night was self-love and a manifestation exercise where we started to visualize the version of us that we know we are, like, maybe more confident, more loving, more compassionate. And yeah, they've been a lot of fun, just kind of getting people to tune into themselves a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really how I found you is because you were doing those meditations
Yeah.
and it was just actually the messages that you were bringing forward through your little videos and things.
Mm,
I remember latching on. That would have been in 21. So,
yeah.
and just really getting interested in watching some of you had a live podcast that you did.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, yeah, I would watch those episodes too.
Very
And
cool.
then you got into hypnosis.
Yep.
And this is something that I know nothing about. I mean, I know of it, but
Sure.
I've never experienced it. And so I'm curious. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, breaking it down simply, I don't like to go too much into the nitty-gritty of it, but the reality is like if we calm the conscious mind, the analytical mind that doesn't stop thinking, if we're able to kind of detach that for a little bit, we have access to a much deeper vault, a much deeper part of us. And the subconscious mind is what we access, or the unconscious mind, as some people refer to. This is where your conditioning is. This is where your wounding is. This is where your belief systems lie. Okay. The first, from basically the last trimester of being in the womb to about 7 or 8, these years are very, you hear kids are sponges, right? These are the years that they start to learn. Well, they're actually in a lower brainwave. They're in a theta brainwave. So theta is actually the state of hypnosis. So they're in a downloading brainwave. So this is why the kids are taking on their environment. They're taking on the beliefs of mom and dad, the church, the school, society. And so we take in all these things. But also what happens is there's traumas along the way. There's things that happen to us. Some of us might have been molested. Some have been might have almost drowned. Some of us, these sound like big things, but guess what? The world goes through this. And what we do with hypnosis, it allows us to kind of access the past so that we can bring consciousness to the unconscious wound. So if an example, I'll use me, for example, made fun of. Let's say you got made fun of in front of the class one day. You're in grade 8, grade 7, really, that age where everybody's opinion really starts to matter. That moment, as you look back to on it as an adult, might not feel like much. You're like, I was young, no big deal. But being a 10-year-old kid, 11-year-old kid, 12-year-old kid, however old you are in grade 6, 7, 8, those moments really affect you, and everybody's different. So those moments can actually create a belief system. It can create a charge in the body of not being safe when you speak your truth, not feeling safe when you wanted to express yourself. Maybe it was a project you had passion around, and then you go up and you say it, and 3 or 4 people or the class laugh at you because you mess up. That's a little mini trauma. And then there's other traumas, like I said, the bigger stuff. They create these safety mechanisms within your subconscious mind, where when something similar comes up in life, that little part of you goes, we're not safe to do that. Remember, come back here. And that's when you get a trigger. That's when you feel like you need to run, get out of there. You don't want to fully express yourself. And so what we do with hypnosis, we put you into a deeper state of relaxation, essentially. And we go, okay, let's go visit your younger self at 7, at 8, at 9. And what do we know now about this situation that we may not have known then? And it's like, oh, yeah, it sucked, it hurt, but we're safe. And we get to actually bring consciousness to that, and we rewrite the story. And when we do it at a level of like being in the unconscious mind, we get to change the story at the root of it. Not just us saying, I'm worthy, I'm loved, it's okay. Consciously, you can say that all you want, but unless that version of you embodies it and starts to know that it's safe, that'll just be a disconnect between the two worlds, conscious and unconscious. And I'm sorry, I hope I'm explaining it in
Oh
a
yeah, no,
easy enough way.
yeah, no, no, that's excellent. No, it
Yeah, and
all makes perfect sense. And and I think people have a little bit of a fear.
of course,
Even I do.
sure.
There's a little fear there about being in that state, because I think that our experience with hypnotism is like in the big shows where you're
Yeah, right.
everybody's on
Yeah,
stage and they're doing
yeah,
crazy things, and
sure.
you might be in the front row and you might get hypnotized and you might do
Right,
crazy things,
right.
and so I know that this is different.
Very. Yeah,
But I think
yeah,
there's fear,
yeah.
right?
So I'll talk on that. Like, that's what most people's being exposed to any type of hypnotism, hypnosis is the stage show.
Mhm.
And if you look at the stage show, you'll notice when a hypnotist is working with a crowd, they're like, hey, let's get 20 of you up here. And they'll have 20 of you up and they'll test everyone, and they'll send like 10 back down, and then they'll test the other 10 and go, okay. And all of a sudden you're only left with like 4 or 5. The reason there's only the 4 or 5 up there, these are very suggestible individuals who want to be part of the show. There's a natural willingness to be in it and to participate. And that's something that's very important with hypnotherapy. You need to want to participate. You need to want to heal. You need to want to go into these realms of unconsciousness. But it's a very different intention going into it. Here you're up here to make people laugh and see what kind of goofy stuff you can do. And here you're going into healing some deep stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, you're both needing to want to do the work. I can't take you, Angela, and say, sit in the chair, I'm going to put you in hypnosis. And you're like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to win that battle. That's not something I would even entertain because there's not a collaboration going on. There has to be a willingness to let go. Okay. And you're never in a state of like being not in control. I'm not like going into your mind and digging up the deepest secrets. I'm asking your higher self where the issue is. I'm asking where your higher self, maybe your soul self, where the blockage is around what you're struggling with. And when we allow ourselves to be guided by that inner voice, inner guidance, it always brings us to a wound or a moment in time where this false identity was created or this false belief system was created.
Mm-hmm.
When I say false, I mean limiting.
Right.
I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. I'm the reason my mom and dad got divorced. I'm the reason my mom or my dad killed themselves. These things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
These are very real beliefs that we carry through grief and moments, but they're very limiting and they're not a true reflection of who we are as a being.
Right.
But there's a version of us that feels very much in the wound. And so it allows us to bypass the analytical, the ego mind, and go into the soul mind, let's say. And we allow that healing to happen. And it happens fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's often not a linear, like months and months and months of work. When
Right.
there's a willingness to go and heal, it can happen now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we talked a little bit in the first video about that, going back and doing the child healing, going
Yes.
back into that. And I had an experience with this actually just on the weekend.
Amazing. Look at the
Not
timing.
hypnotism, but I was doing a touch
Sure.
for health class, and
Yeah.
we went back to when I was 9,
There you
and
go.
we moved. And I hadn't, it's funny, I hadn't made the connection. We moved then. There was this, bumpy ride for me. Actually, it wasn't good. And
Right.
then when I moved to Maple Creek, I didn't think about it.
Yep.
Why did I not think about that? How that would impact me and my
Mm-hmm.
social engagement,
Right.
and how I don't
Right.
want to get out and I don't want to,
Right.
there's a lot of fear there. And it was
Sure.
just so fascinating. And I think with hypnosis, we probably could have even gone deeper with that.
Further or deeper. But
Yeah.
you might not even have needed it. So
Mm.
with hypnosis, it's a way to access the unconscious, just like you accessed it in that moment. You were able to go in there because you allowed, I like to look at it as this higher self, the soul guiding you, going, oh, and you can get there in different forms. It could be sound healing. It could be hypnosis. They're all putting you into a different state, altered state of consciousness, a deeper state of connection to yourself. So no matter what's used to get you there, the important part is that you brought consciousness to an unconscious memory.
Right.
And what you did in that moment is you started to connect dots.
Mm.
You started to go, oh, that makes sense. All of a sudden that unlocks something. Oh, that unlocks something. Consciousness is how we heal. The unconsciousness is where we stay stuck.
Right.
And so that's why I love hypnosis, because that's how I'm trained. That's what helped me. But I've also had these moments during a sound bath, during being in nature, just being at peace in nature, all of a sudden over and just flooded with these moments or connecting of dots. Hypnosis is just a very quick way to access those realms. And it's kind of no different than you hear people using plant medicine, ayahuasca, psilocybin with your mushrooms, different type of therapies that way. Guess what? That medicine is bringing you into the same realm
Yeah.
to heal, because we can't remember who we are until we let go of who we're not.
Mm.
And who we're not is usually a very limiting idea. It's a very limiting personality that we've created. And I say limiting because it's usually wrapped in fear or doubt, unworthiness, not being loved, not being enough. those 3 or 4 core beliefs, when they're running the show in the bottom or in the depths, it's very hard to fully express yourself in your body as a human being in this world. So that's why the healing is so important.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. And
Hmm.
sometimes we just feel off and we don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and I think you're in your story, you were talking about that. Had a lot of depression and anxiety,
Yeah.
and you really couldn't put your finger on exactly why all that was happening. And I still have experiences like that where I just feel awful, and it seems to take a lot of time sometimes to figure out what it is. And sometimes I don't even know if I do figure it out. It just kind of works its way out. What's your
Yeah.
experience with that?
Yeah, there's a few places I want to touch on with that. I go back to my story, and so I had a life where I had everything that society told me I needed for happiness. I had a job, I was making well over 6 figures. I had a family, I had 2 healthy babies. I had 10 acres on my own piece of land. I had a hobby farm with goats, chickens. Like I was like so much going on in my life. And to the outside world, to me, to them would be like, you have it all. The $1 million family, call it what you will. And I was grateful for these things, but there was something inside of me saying, this isn't aligned. There's so much going on. Yeah, you've chased everything you were told you needed to chase, but you have not put any energy to what you feel you need and what you truly drives you. So that's where depression happens. It's the what we were taught and we jump into what we're told, but we're avoiding the inner pulls and intuitive guidance of the soul. So you're going one way and your soul's going, yeah, but you're more than this. You're actually meant to do bigger things, or meant to be in a different relationship, maybe meant to whatever. And there's this disconnect that happens. You're going one way because you're taught and conditioned to do it. You get all the things and you're like, why am I not happy? What I've got all the what's going on? And the soul's going, yeah, because you're not actually listening.
Mm.
And so there's a bunch to this going on. And one of the things too is a gratitude practice can really help unlock that barricade or that disconnect and help you start moving within the soul. Because when people hear about gratitude, it's kind of a buzzword now. Like everybody says gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. But gratitude is not a word. Gratitude is a state of being, and you have to cultivate it. You have to strengthen it. That's why a practice of gratitude is like praying. It's like meditating. You gotta do it to get good at it, because it's the feeling of gratitude that really helps you shift from being in that. Um, but either way, the depression for me was my soul saying, hey, you're bigger than this. Not being better than anyone, but just there's a bigger expression of you over here if you listen. But if you still stay stuck in these limiting beliefs or even limiting loops, drinking, partying, hanging out with people that don't really resonate with you anymore, staying in a job that is killing you, all these things, that's where this tug of war happens internally. And that's why we get so depressed and anxious.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And as you awaken spiritually, you start to realize right away that you don't feel right.
Yeah.
Something's not right and something's coming.
Yeah.
And I've learned to embrace that a lot more. Yet I am finding that some of these are really big.
Mm.
And when they come, I don't want to be grateful. I don't want to be happy. I don't want
Yeah.
to, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even want to do the things that I'm supposed to do to
Yep.
keep me healthy.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to do any of it.
Yeah.
I'm just not happy.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's an interesting place to be, because we've all been there, and I've been there here even recently. It's like there's nothing wrong with fully owning the fact that you don't want to do the stuff that you know you want to do.
Mm,
But if you're gonna be a victim, fully be a victim. Like
right.
fully be it. Just say, you know what, today I'm a freaking victim and I'm gonna own it. And I'm gonna eat freaking chocolate bars. I'm gonna sit my ass on the couch and I'm gonna pout for a little bit. But
Mhm.
when you fully own it, it gives the energy a place to go. And it doesn't have this, oh, I shouldn't be in this.
Right.
Oh, I should be better than this by now. I should know better. I know what I need to be eating. Screw that. Give yourself full permission to fully be in that, but then give yourself full permission to step the heck out of it too.
Right.
right? Because we are human. We are human. We are not going to be on this high vibe, love and light bullshit all the time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's a false, in my mind, in my experience, the love and light in everything is a complete crock. You need the balance of dark and light. You need the contrast of life showing you challenge so you can respond to it. And then fully giving yourself permission to be a victim for a day. Guess what? That's okay too. Sometimes we don't want to do the work. We don't want to go to the gym. Maybe it's just a call to rest. Yeah. Was I on track with that one?
Yes,
Or was I rambling?
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think people need to hear that, because I think that's one of the things that, I thought, well, if when I become spiritually awake, everything will just be good, right? It'll all be good. It'll be good. Well, it's
Mhm.
not. And I find that there's these highs that are so high,
Yeah.
and then there's the lows that are so low. And it's that roller coaster ride that you're
Yeah.
on. And last video, you talked about being able to surf the waves,
Yeah.
which I think we just touched a little bit on it, but I want you to talk a little bit more about that. Like, how can we be good surfers?
Yeah.
These tremendous waves.
Right. The one of the biggest teachings I'm really leaning into right now and really embodying and embracing is like the idea of holding everything lightly.
Mm.
So you have a moment of joy, a moment of these highs. Try to leave it right there in your hand and don't try to do this to it. Because as soon as you attach to this, oh, this is life. This is a spiritual awakening. This is what I'm supposed to be. Then when that starts to leak through your fingers, you're going, oh no, I'm losing it. Oh no, now I'm not whole anymore. And the same thing with grief or pain or doubt. Hold it lightly because everything ebbs and flows. Everything goes in waves. And when you become a good surfer, little wave, big wave, and just go, okay, I'm going to surf this wave. Let it move any energy, emotion in my body that needs to be moved. And I know that this wave is temporary. There's calmness on the other end of this. And so it's the idea of like letting life happen without getting attached to it being good or bad, devastating or ecstasy. Like it's the attachment of the ego again that says this is the way. No, life ain't going to be all this high vibe stuff. You're going to have the highs, you're going to have the lows. And so it's this ability that you get, I think, really good at is just riding it, letting it happen. And I'll bring another teaching that one of my mentors taught me was that if you were to think of life as a pendulum, okay, these are the lows and here are the highs, and it swings back and forth. Instead of riding the pendulum where it swings, if you can attach yourself up here where it's connected, the swings are so much less extreme, right? You're not feeling the of everything. So it's like, get up here. And I think that's the essence of holding it lightly. I think it's being up there where it's tied and going, oh yeah, this is nice, but this too shall pass. This is brutal, but this too shall pass. These old sayings really have a deeper meaning when you start going through these big swings. But I think that's a really big one is like, let it be joyful, but
Right.
don't get attached to it having to be the way you need to be.
Yeah.
And then when things fall apart, let them fall apart. And know that this isn't you. It's not going to last. Yeah, hold it lightly.
Mm. I love that.
Mm,
And I want to ask you about, so we get into this cycle of healing something. Something comes up for healing.
yep.
And so I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I had this kind of guilt about
Yep.
not spending enough time with my husband when he was alive,
Sure.
working too much,
Sure.
spending, too much time at work. And he said it
Sure.
many times, I
Sure.
want you home more. I need a
Mhm.
normal wife, he used to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Sure.
And I thought I healed that.
Mm,
But last night it came up
mm,
again.
mhm,
And it came up with a vengeance.
mm,
And I was just like, what is that? Like, I know that there's a cyclical way of healing and that you come around to these things again. And I think for a lot of people, if you don't know that, it can get really, well, frustrating.
Discouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because so when we move out of a layer of, I call them layers because they're like it's like an onion, you know,
Mhm.
they're just layers to this. When we come out of a moment of healing and we find that peace around it, like let's say you did, you like I think I healed mostly around this, and then you find yourself in it again, you're like, I'm back there.
Right.
You're not actually back there. It's just the feeling and the resonance and the or not the resonance, the feeling and the frequency of the wound feels similar or it's the same. So often we can get in our heads going, "Oh no, I didn't do anything. I'm back in this grief, this energy." But God, universe, source, whatever you want to call it, only gives you what you're ready to look at.
Mm.
Your consciousness needs to be at a level for you to heal the layer that's coming up. But as it comes up with a vengeance, these are just simply opportunities and invitations to go deeper with it because there's still something alive within you that still feels shame and guilt.
Right.
And the body is showing you this so you can clear it. It's like saying, hey, I need to make this really clear because this piece, this illusion that you weren't enough, okay, it's not true. That's just why it feels like shit in the body because
Right.
it's the ego that goes, oh no, here I am again. But the higher self is going, this is coming up into the body for you to explore with compassion, with love, not with judgment and this, because when these opportunities arise, we can either go, oh, you idiot, you did it again. I can't believe I was this kind of wife to him. I can't boo doo 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 doo. And you get into the
Mhm.
unconscious loop of the story that is attached to that wound. Or you bring love and compassion to it. And you can start exploring this. You can do this in journaling. You can definitely do it with hypnosis, coaching, breath work. But it's an invitation. It's a road sign. It's like ding, 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 ding. Here's
Yeah.
some stuff that isn't true, that is asking to be cleared and being to be loved, so that we can create the space. We can release it, give it to God, give it to source, give it to whoever needs it, whatever that goes for you. And when we do that, we release it and we create space for more expansion.
Mm.
It's like, think of your soul as this perfect, let's just use a circle, like this big ball of energy. That's your soul. It's so perfect. It's so whole. It's so absolutely pristine, except for the wounds, the stories, the limiting beliefs. They cause distortion within the soul, like little blips of like energy that can't move. And so the soul can't express itself fully when those little pieces of distortion are active and in the body. And so what you're hearing from the body is like, hey, can we go clear this up? Because this isn't allowing us to fully expand and fully be ourselves.
Mhm.
Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And I love how you explained that. Yeah. And I think it gives people a lot of, I know it gives me a lot of comfort to know that that process is normal, that people go
Oh
through
yeah.
this
Very
and,
normal.
and know that it's going to keep on happening.
Well, and I want you to be careful with even that because yeah, we will never stop expanding in this life.
Right.
I promise you. But the core wounds, the big heavy wounds get lighter and lighter and lighter. I created it. There's this little, this came in a vision in meditation. If you were to look at, uh, I don't know why I see it this way, but let's pretend you're in your office or let's say the kitchen, and you're holding your arm straight out to the side like this. And in your hand is a stack of papers, like a stack of printer paper right out of the package, and you're holding it straight out. This represents the wound, the trauma. You hold it out here for long enough, it's going to start to shake. Your arm's going to get tired, and you're like, oh my god. So then you do some deeper work, some healing around it, and you start to, kick things loose a little bit. And on both ends of your kitchen are two windows. They're wide open. What's going to happen is if you allow the windows to stay open, there's going to be a breeze that comes through every once in a while. And a breeze is going to be an emotion that's being moved from the body. And as you leave the windows open, the breezes come through and it's going to take a few sheets of paper off the top. then maybe 2 months later, guess what? We're going to do some more work around it. As long as you keep those windows open, it's going to take another breeze. And all of a sudden, it's going to take half of the papers. It's going to get lighter and lighter. But every time the wave happens, it's still going to feel like an intense breeze. So it's going to feel big. But the more, as long as you allow the windows to stay open, as long as you allow yourself to feel, to let it move, it's going to get, the stack's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So the work in meditation, in group work, in retreats, in hypnosis, that allows you to kind of knock things loose. That's stuck, the distortion. The emotional release, it could be coughing, it could be tears, it could be rage. All of that is just that energy being like purged from the vessel, purged from your body that was holding on to it. So leave the windows open, let yourself feel, and let those cycles come in. You call it cyclical. I'm not sure if it's cyclical more than it is like just a different level of the healing that needs to happen. And you're not going to do it all at once.
Mm.
And so the core wounds gets lighter and lighter and lighter until they will dissipate to nothing. And then the expansion later in life will just be different challenges, different, not so much around you being unworthy or guilt or shame. Now it's more about expanding into more, maybe of your gifts, maybe of your purpose, maybe of things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Was that clear? Like kind of.
Yeah, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
I love that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I also want to talk to you about connecting with your guides,
Mm-hmm.
because this is something that I've started to do in the last maybe 6 months or so. And now it's just getting so that like they're always there talking.
Yeah. Isn't that incredible?
Yes, it's amazing. And so I know that you work with people and I know that you work with healers.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit more about that and what you do.
Wow. So trained in not regular clinical hypnotherapy going into this work 6 years ago. I was always this mystic. Like I loved the psychic abilities. I love people's intuition. I love that connection to the metaphysical world. And I think naturally, as I evolved as a practitioner, as a guide, I call myself kind of an activator now, is that I naturally call in healers, whether they know they're healers or not. And the activation and their remembering of their like soul's imprinting and who they are at a deeper level starts to come to the surface. And that's one of the coolest things ever, is to see someone come to me with sexual trauma or all this deep, heavy stuff that they've been carrying for 30, 40 years, and they let it go. And all of a sudden their consciousness expands. They start to tune into their intuition, their gifts, their abilities to tune into their guides, their ancestors, angels. These are very real entities, energies. But if we're not open to them, we're not going to experience them. Mm-hmm. If there's fear, we'll shut it down. If you don't want to believe in it, don't. It's not there for you. It's fine. Whether you believe in it or not, you're right. And so when we start to tune in, it's one of the most gratifying things you can ever do, because you start to realize, oh, we literally are not alone on this journey. And even the ones that pass in physical form are here with us. Mm-hmm. Like they're right here. And the guides, or your higher self, some people call it different things. I feel like there are different energies all the time, and they're shifting with me. And as I evolve, different ones come in and different ones leave. And it's kind of like they have their own little soul contracts with me. That's something that everyone has access to. Mm-hmm. It's not a gifted person. It's not a special person. It's not just Joey. It's not just Angela. You all have access to this, but it takes practice. It takes going to the gym. You're not going to get strong legs squatting one day in the gym. You got to go to the gym every, 5-6 days a week for a few years to get really strong, big legs, or weeks. And the same thing with tuning intuition in your guides, is developing how you receive that guidance and information. Mm-hmm. Are you clear? Are you a visual person? Are you clairvoyant? Are you clairaudient? Do you hear more? Are you claircognizant, which is more of that knowing? Are you clairsentient? Are you a feeler? And you could be a little bit of all those things, but everyone has these gifts. It's just the ones that sharpen their sword and trust it and flex that muscle, those are the ones that become the psychics you see and those spiritual leaders that you see, because they allow themselves to trust and fine tune that.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think it's that because it is very subtle,
Yeah.
I find. And so the first while, I believe, well, I didn't know what to believe.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty normal.
You don't necessarily trust. I mean, these things are coming in,
Mm-hmm.
and I got so that I started asking questions. Was because at first it was just coming in randomly,
Yeah.
and then it
Amazing.
was like, okay, now I'm going to ask a question and I'll actually
Right.
get an answer,
Right.
which was fascinating to me because it felt like I was making it up
Yep. Yep. Normal.
in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people really want this inner connection, and they
Yeah.
believe that they can't do it because for whatever reason they think
Yeah.
they're special. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that everyone has
Everybody.
this ability. Yeah.
Well, everybody's had these moments of intuitive knowing. Everybody's
Mhm.
had these moments of like, oh, spidey sense, gonna take this way. And you go, wow, that's wild how I just knew that.
Yeah.
It's everybody has these moments, but a lot of you just, oh, that's just random. No, it ain't random. It's showing you how powerful you are, how connected you are to the literally everything.
Mhm.
And and a big problem that people get into when they start developing their gifts or wanting to is they get so hung up on how their gifts are supposed to be perceived.
Right.
And a big one is vision. So clairvoyance is one of those things that everybody wants. They want to see, but not everyone is clairvoyant naturally. Some people are feelers. And if they're not tuning into the natural way that they receive information, they're missing it out because they're looking over here and everything's happening here. So there's a sense of expectation of what it's supposed to look like. But that's why I like doing the meditations on Sundays, because I like to provide an opportunity for people to like stop with the expectation. What happens if you went into the experience without any of that and go, okay, what's meant for me is meant for me. Show me. All of a
Mhm.
sudden someone will be like, ooh, I just got the chills and I felt a presence. Yeah, there you go. There's your clairsentience coming online. And the more you tune into that, the stronger it gets, the more easier it moves and starts to expand. And then someone goes, oh, I saw a flash of something. I'm like, yeah, there's your clairvoyance. It might come in flashes. And then this person was trying to see it as if they were first person, like clear. No, it comes in flashes for you. Someone will be like, oh, I thought I heard a voice. There's your clairaudience. So you have to kind of play with it
Mhm.
and ask your guides, hey, where am I most open? How do I best receive my information? Is it through like hearing? Cool. Show me more. And ask, show me more. And when we tune in, practice, it gets stronger. And that's when the other gifts start to evolve. So you can actually be tuned into all the clairs, but it all takes trust and faith, and especially when it's subtle in the beginning.
Mhm. Yeah. 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 And so that's why there are people like you to help people like
Yeah.
us,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, or tell everyone who's listening. Oh,
Mhm.
the other thing I want to ask you, I'm just checking my
Sure.
list here.
Yeah. Yeah. Take your time.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the shamanic journey. Do you do that with your meditations, or is that a separate thing? Or,
Like, have you been looking at shamanic journeying? Is that what you've been looking into? Or,
well, I've had experience with
okay.
it. So I'm just asking for my audience
Yeah.
and me.
So I truly firmly believe that either I was a shaman in past lives or I have this healer energy within me from lifetimes, maybe just DNA. I don't know. But I started, researching the shamanic path a little while ago, and I started doing the shamanic journeying, which is lower world, middle world, upper world. And I very loosely, like, I didn't fully dive into it, but I am being pulled to the medicine wheel here in mountain shamanism. And there's a group here that does the medicine wheel and diving deeper in that. But it's not something that I specifically focus on at the moment.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's similar to what I do anyway, now that I know it. So I don't call it the shamanic journey. I call it the inner journey. And it all basically, in my mind, goes to the same place. It's all returns you home. It brings you home.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
Cool. And remind people, where are you again?
I'm in British Columbia, so I'm in just in the Okanagan in BC.
In the Okanagan. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew you were in BC somewhere, but I
Hmm.
couldn't
Yeah.
remember where.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so tell people, just a little bit about what you offer so that if they want to check out more.
Yeah. So I'm currently branching out into in-person events, which is like a dream for a while, and it just all the pieces had to come together. But I'm being hired to actually be flown to places to practice and help people facilitate retreats and personal in-person events. So if anybody's looking for a hypnotherapist and a meditation guide, you run events and you want someone, like me to be there, you can always contact me. But my core offer for the last few years has been my soul alignment program. So right now it's a 4-month program where we dive deep into the one-on-one inner work. You and like, let's say you did this, you and I would meet, but every couple weeks, every 2 weeks, one-on-one for about hour to an hour and a half, where we dive into the wounds, mother wound, father wound, limiting beliefs, whatever stuck, that distortion, like I talked about, we rip that out. And with that, you have a community on School. School is spelled Skool. It's a pretty new platform, but there's a community space where it's private, where everybody supports each other. Like, there's stories sharing, there's just amazing support within the community. I have a group call every Friday within the community as well. So we do a group coaching call on Friday for an hour. Direct message access to me for support through that 4 months. And all my recordings of, like, all my paid stuff that I had on my website, everything is there in one place. And the reason I do that now is, like, focusing on one thing instead of focusing on 100 things.
Mm,
I get to really, really hone in on my skill and my ability to help people. So yeah, that's basically the thing. I have some smaller group things that I launch once in a while, but nothing at the moment. So yeah, if you're interested in being guided through your awakening and your wounding and your, whatever those triggers and those, if you find yourself in those cycles that keep coming up over and over and over
mm,
again, it's an invitation, and I guide people on a very personal, specific path to their purpose. Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. And so we'll definitely have a link for people to
Yeah.
find you.
Yeah. And with that, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but there's a
Nope.
free call for anyone who wants to know more. So anybody who jumps in for 4 months, that's obviously a commitment. So it's not like, oh, I saw this guy on Angela's show and he seems cool, I'll just pay him.
Yeah.
We go through a process of kind of vetting. Like, it's for me and for you to make sure that there's a good connection between each other. Because if you hate the way I sound, you hate the way my energy is, I really hope you don't pay me to do work. It's
Yeah.
important to have a feeling of like, okay, this is the energy I want to be in. So we do a half-hour call. It's free of charge. Even if you don't do anything, I don't charge you $1 for the call. I want to make sure that if you invest in this time, this money and this time, you feel really excited about. Like, I'm all about empowered yeses versus like forced
Mm,
sales kind of stuff.
right.
So free call is available for anyone who wants any more information.
Excellent. Yeah. And is it joeylabossiere.com? Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's my website. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll make sure we have that. Is there anything else you want to add before we go?
No, is there any other questions you might have? Hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, no, you answered a lot of my questions. Well, pretty much all my questions,
Yeah.
I would say. Um, and who knows, maybe there'll be a part three.
I'd be down. If I will tell anybody this, whoever's on the awakening, the path, the healing, whatever is going on, try to bring some lightness and some joy to it. Because, I think a lot of the content out there is like, it's hard, it's the deep work, it's brutal, it's that, it's yeah, it's worth it. But you know what? All these things that we're working on are just old stories. They're old stories that we're powerless, that we're this, that they did something to us. When we just let go of the heaviness of it all and say, you know what, I'm going to go into this with an open heart. I'm going to, walk a little closer to who I really am. And I'm going to try to have some fun with it. You're going to save yourself a lot of unnecessary suffering and loops of like, it's hard, it's this. It doesn't have to be.
Mm.
And it's okay to take a break. If you want to take a month off the healing, take a month off the healing, would you? Go eat your chocolate bars if you need to.
Yeah.
You know, sure you don't do it every day, but like live. And because the healing happens when we integrate into life. It's not always sitting on the cushion meditating and doing the shadow work and talking about it with everybody all the time. It's just living life. We have to live. We're humans. We have an opportunity to have a wild experience on this planet. So don't forget to have some fun.
Ooh, I love that
Yeah.
point about how it happens when you're integrating into life.
Of course. You
Interesting.
sit you sit at the retreat for 4 months straight. You can be in ayahuasca ceremony with the best shaman in the Amazon. You can work with me for a year and a half solid. We bring that into the world. That's how we integrate into, that's how we heal. It's not just here. It's how do we bring the new awareness? How do we bring the new love? How do we bring the new self-love to the world as we live?
Oh,
Yeah,
love that.
big
That's
part.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, good. I'm glad it was but it's an important piece because we can get, I'm gonna jump on this because I think it's really important.
Mhm.
Before we go into healing, we have usually this voice of, you're not enough, you're not worthy, you're not doing enough. And that often keeps you out from healing. Like it's like, oh, don't worry, don't do it. You're shitty, you're blah, blah, blah. All this narrative. And then when we jump into the healing journey, guess what? That little ego voice changes and goes, you're not healing enough. You're
Mm,
not doing enough work. You're not meditating enough. You're
great.
not eating enough clean food. Oh, now you're not doing this enough. And so one thing that was not enough just shifts into a different identity of not enough. You're doing enough. Trust. Yeah, there'll be times you need to push yourself a little bit, but trust yourself. You're doing enough,
Mhm.
because that ego will always take a different form to try to come in and try to get you to doubt yourself. So just go live, take a break, go for a swim, go for a hike. But you don't care, but the not enough voice can change. And it goes from you not being enough to heal. And now you're like not doing enough healing.
Mhm.
Come on. Yeah. Just be weary. It always sneaks in the weirdest ways.
Yeah, well, I encourage people to check out Joey's website and all that he offers. And thank you again for coming back.
So fun. So
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
Thanks everyone for watching,
Thank
and
you.
bye for now.